One more time here, folks, on the LA Sparks 365 Network, coming back here from Studio 171 in the Edenhart Studios up in Anaheim, California. And it's now a bit uncommon, folks, that we have double headers or triple headers now here on the network because of they've changed the format of doing on-air hangouts now for YouTube now, which is a bit stupid in my view. In any case, folks, welcome back to the LA Sparks 365 Network, your 24/7, 365 comprehensive home of the WNBA and your two-time WNBA champion LA Sparks. Welcome in, folks, to night number 10 of 12 here for the WNBA seasonal recaps tonight, recapping the 2014 season for the Atlanta Dream. Rejoined here by Chris Mancy via Apple's FaceTime from the Edenhart Studios up in Anaheim, California. Cam McClure back here from Studio 171 in San Diego. Chris, one more show for the night. And again, dude, it's not been very common for us to be doing double headers on the YouTube now right now because of a few things that they've done on Google Plus and on YouTube, man. Is it a bit strange doing two shows in one night again like we used to early before the switch over on Google Plus?
Yeah, seems weird.
Yeah, because normally, folks, we're only here for a half hour and we're done for the night. But with that, Chris, I don't know, man. The Atlanta Dream, Chris, 19-15, took over the number one spot again in the WNBA Eastern Conference. But, Chris, there was a major problem they faced in the first round of the postseason. But, Chris, we'll start things off, though, with the Dream again, Chris, with their new head coach, which would be, of course, former Sparks head coach Michael Cooper. And, Chris, Coop, man, did so many great things for the Sparks in 01 and 02 during his 2 tenures there with the Sparks. Of course, winning the first title in 01 and the back-to-back titles in 02 with Lisa Leslie, Mawadi Mabika, Nikki Teasley, Delisha Milton-Jones, name a few, Chris. And then, of course, man, he comes back during Candace Parker's rookie season, and the team, Chris, looked like it was the same Cooper-led Sparks, Chris, during that time. But, again, just didn't have that playoff success like they did in 01 and 02, Chris. Then, of course, he takes a few years off to go do some future endeavors, Chris. But then, man, he comes back to the WNBA and goes to Atlanta, Chris. Chris, in your view, how do you sort of remember Michael Cooper for his time with the Sparks? And also, man, was it good, though, man, to see him back in the WNBA, whether it was with the Sparks or not, coaching, though, back in the WNBA again?
Yeah, just seems awesome to see, even though he's not coaching the Sparks again, it seems awesome to see Michael Cooper back in coaching in the WNBA.
Yeah, Chris, unfortunately, man, there's those ex-players that, unfortunately, man, may never get the chance to coach in the NBA, like Coop and Bill Laimbeer that are coaching the WNBA, Chris. They never will probably get their chance to be NBA head coaches anytime soon. But again, Chris, I think, man, that when Coop went to Atlanta, man, I think everyone can agree, Chris, that they thought that Atlanta would be back in the finals again for the third or fourth straight year, man. But but Chris, I think the reason why, though, man, that everyone said that they would be back again was because they had a coach that knew how to win in the WNBA, Chris, with what all Michael did with the Sparks in 01 and 02. But again, Chris, it just seems like, man, that Coop has not had that same sort of magic from the 01-02 season, so he was able to bring back to LA during Parker's rookie season in those first 4 years that she was playing to now he's with Atlanta, Chris. So it just seems like, man, that Coop, that it looks like, Chris, that it kind of looks like, man, that unfortunately Coop's luck has ran out a bit. Chris, would you agree, though, that perhaps Michael Cooper's glory days are a bit behind him, perhaps, in the WNBA as a head coach?
Yeah, I think perhaps Michael Cooper's glory days of head coach are behind him.
Pretty sad to see, but again, Chris, we'll see if they can keep going. Now, Chris, a team in, Chris, a dream team, man, it's getting a bit up in age a little bit, not a whole lot, but Chris, they were led again by their star player, Angel McCoughtry again, Chris, and Angel again, man. I think, Chris, since seeing her get drafted to the Dream in 09, she's been Chris, she's been a very, very dynamic player for the Dream, and she is the face of the franchise. But, Chris, it just seems like, man, that Angel and Candace Parker are very, very alike in the playoffs, that they have had all their runs, Chris, and without a championship. And they are it's, Chris, unfortunately, it is what it is, man, that Angel and Parker's careers sort of parallel, that they have not won a championship yet in their careers, Chris. But again, man, Chris, Angel is sort of like Parker, where it's normally her showing up every night. Some players show up, but again, Chris, it's mostly her doing all the dirty work, Chris. Do you think, though, man, that perhaps that Angel is sort of being perceived like Candace Parker, that they're not being measured of of when they win, Chris, but how many they win though in their careers?
Yeah, perhaps.
And I don't think, Chris, that it's fair to do that to pro athletes, that you can judge them by not when they're going to win, Chris, but how many they're going to win. Because you really, Chris, you can't put a number on how many titles they're going to win. I mean, Chris, even ask Bill Russell, Chris. I mean, I'm sure there's people that said, oh, he won maybe one, but he won 11. So I don't think it's good to be doing that. Then, Chris, there was their dynamic rookie draftee, Chris, who's got a great story herself too. Like we talked about Candace Wiggins during the interview last week, Chris. But again, man, their draft pick of Shoni Showtime Schimmel, Chris, who basically game one, Chris, electrified the fan base in Atlanta, Chris, and also, man, sparked positive news. Chris, and I'll say that again, Chris, positive news in the Native American landscape, Chris, of everything we're seeing that's going on in the NFL with the Redskins, debacle with that name, with the name, Chris, that Shoni Schimmel, Chris, in her way, brought so much great positive talking points to the Native American fan base and the Native American people, Chris, with how great her play was, Chris. But also, man, it was so cool, though. So awesome, man, that all of the other teams, Chris, had their home game with Atlanta, Chris, where they let Native American people come to the game for free, basically, Chris. She had about 500 to 1,000 people at her away games, Chris, and she would hold post-game seminars to talk to all the tribe members, Chris. Chris, in your view, man, how much great stuff did Shoni Schimmel do, Chris? Not just for the Atlanta Dream and for the WNBA, Chris, but for the Native American fan base, Chris, and also, Chris, for the Native American people that have basically have been getting, that basic, Chris, have been getting so much stuff thrown in their face with what's been going on with the Redskins and the name and all the other, crap going on in the NFL with the team name, Chris. How much great news and how much great stuff, though, did Shoni bring, though, to the WNBA for one deal, Chris, but also, man, to her culture, too, which, of course, Chris, is her Native American heritage.
I think Shoni Schimmel did a very awesome job handling the situation, and I think she did a great job.
Yeah, Chris, Shoni gets everyone's gratitude, Chris. I mean, she is basically, Chris, a role model for all the Native American people, Chris, that can't find a way off the reservations, Chris. They're stuck there their whole lives. And, Chris, this sort of is a way that, with Shoni doing what she's done, Chris, again, man, that every away game, so many Native American people were at her away games. She would hold post-game autograph sessions and post-game seminars with them, Chris. I think that Sue Faber told me, Chris, there was a section of about 1,000 local Native American people, Chris, from either San Manuel, from Paula, Pachanga, that came to the game, man, and, watched her play. And, of course, Chris also had, got autographs and photos after the game, man. And, Chris, in a day and age where we got so much crap going on with the Washington Redskins and the NFL about, change the name, Chris, it was good, man, for once to see so much great positive talking points for not only, Chris, for the WNBA, but again, man, positive talking points again, dude, for the Native American people, Chris. And again, with what they've been having to go through with the Redskins, man, so good to see. Then, of course, Chris, away from the core, Chris, away from the players, though, man, is what has been the Atlanta Dream's playoff woes, man. And Chris, it's either been getting to the finals and losing, or this year, Chris, ousted in round one by the 4-seed Chicago Sky, Chris, where it just looks like, Chris, there has been so many problems with Atlanta in the playoffs, man. Is there a recipe, man, or what do you think, Chris, has to be fixed for this Dream Team, Chris, to get to the finals? Yes, man, but above all, Chris, winning the damn thing for once.
I think probably another player, another piece, the roster, and probably should help.
2 in-season moves, Chris, I'll bring up here real quick here. Celine Demerck from France came in. Then, of course, Chris, there was DMJ. There was our go-to girl, man. There was DMJ, Chris, in a trade from New York to Atlanta for Swin Cash going to New York, Chris. Unfortunately, though, that DMJ got hurt in the first round of the playoffs. Chris couldn't play because of an Achilles injury. Chris, 2 players I think, man, that changed the course, man. But I think, man, their roster is good. It's pretty solid, Chris, from up and down, from Angel to Shoni to Erica de Souza to players off the bench, Chris. I think, though, man, their one problem, Chris, I believe, has been fatigue. I think that Chris, it looks like, man, that they're so depleted. They're so tired in the playoffs, especially, Chris, in the finals. That's why they're losing in the playoffs, Chris, is I think, man, that they exert so much energy to get the 1 seed, and they exert so much energy, Chris, being, regular season dominance, Chris. But again, man, it looks like, man, that they just bomb out, but something, Chris, clicks off for Atlanta in the playoffs, Chris. Is that a problem, though, man, that perhaps that he can possibly blame team fatigue and possibly, Chris, maybe not having championship experience yet as well?
Yeah, I think probably fatigue, like you said, got tired in the playoffs and just couldn't get past the first round.
Chris, to kind of relate the Dream season to your season, the Angels season, Chris, it's a stretch of time of the team peaking too early before the playoffs, Chris. You know us very well. The Angels won, 10 or 11 straight games in the mid of August or September, Chris, where, again, man, that momentum, man, basically, did a California screaming nosedive, dude, and went through a loop like we're going to be doing in December or January, man, and boom, a 3-game sweep at the hands of the Royals, man. Where in the Dreams case, Chris, it was that regular season dominance again, man, but they lost in 3 to Chicago, where, Chris, even last year in 2013, man, all the way through the postseason without a blemish, boom, you lose to a little Lynx team, Chris. That's what the problem, I think, Chris, has been, too, is reaching that climax way too soon, and then, go down and go do a loop-de-loop and some bunny hops at California Screaming, or even just go down the Tower of Terror, folks. Drop down 13 stories and watch your season go up in the dust, and watch your season stay in Hollywood up at Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, folks. All I can say for it. But again, folks, the Atlanta Dream, again, 19-15, number 1 seed in the WNBA Eastern Conference, ousted in 3 tough games, I should say, by the Chicago Sky, who are the eventual Eastern Conference champs. So, Chris, we'll get to one more bullet point before we wrap up for the night here again, Chris, is basically, man, what is wrong with Atlanta in the playoffs, man? I think we covered it, man, but also going forward towards next season, Chris, okay, man, Coop back, Michael Cooper's back, Angel and those guys in place, Chris. What is your outlook for 2015 for Atlanta, Chris? Do you have them back in the 1 seed, or is it their division conference title to lose? What do you think is their outlook for 2015 right now?
I think it's their conference to lose until someone beats them. I think it's...
Hold that thought, Chris. Remember, man, it was their conference to lose until they lost it in round 1 of the postseason to Chicago, Chris. What do you think, though, man? Is this probably, man, a changing of the guard where perhaps it may not be Atlanta's division and conference to lose anymore? What do you think now?
I think it's probably the changing of the conference, probably. And I don't know. That's what it might be changing.
I don't know, Chris. That conference, Chris, I can go back and look at the numbers one more time, man. That Eastern Conference was pretty wide open, Chris. When you look at the virtue, Chris, that teams 2 through 4, Chris, all finished with losing records, that they only won the division championship, Chris. They only won the conference title, Chris, by 3 games. So it's basically, Chris, it's anyone's conference title right now, man, that, it could be Indiana next year. It could be Washington. It could be Chicago, Chris. Chris, for heaven's sakes, man, it could be the retirement home in New York probably winning the championship, Chris, because that conference is so wide open. Again, folks, Atlanta only won the conference title by 3 full games over Indiana. Teams 2 through 6 had losing records in the Eastern Conference. Again, Atlanta was the only team above 500. And again, they only won the conference title by 3 games. So again, folks, in my view, this conference is wide open for anyone's taking next year. Now, Chris, we look ahead to tomorrow when we finally can wrap up these recaps, man. So many problems here, so many things in our way here, man. Tomorrow night, Chris, the Western Conference finalist runners-up, Chris. The Minnesota Lynx are tomorrow night, Chris. And Minnesota, man, yes, MVP here from Moore, Chris. But again, man, the injury bug and its bloody fangs were all over Target Center in Minneapolis, Chris. So many injuries, Chris. What is your early preview and thoughts about the Lynx season, Chris? Again, man, yes, a great season by Maya Moore, Chris. But again, man, one player can't win you a WNBA title, man. What was the biggest problem for the Lynx this 2014 season?
Pretty much their big pieces in the lineup were out, and I think just look like a different new Minnesota Lynx team that we never seen.
Never seen, Chris. We haven't seen in quite some time. They were pretty bad when they first came in 1999 to the league, Chris, and they were bad up until 2011. But with that, folks, again, the Lynx are tomorrow night, 10 o'clock p.m. back here on LAS 365. But with that, folks, until tomorrow night, have a safe night. Drive home safely. Thank you all for coming. And good night now. This has been the LA Sparks 365 Network. We are Sparks. We are LA, and we certainly are the WNBA. See you fine folks back here tomorrow night, 10 p.m. Pac, 1 a.m. Eastern, to recap the 2014 season for the Minnesota Lynx. We'll see you folks back here tomorrow night. Bye-bye.